Thank you for joining us at Victims to Victorious here on the Black Talk Radio Network. My name is Angel Fall, and this recording is very special for me and the people of the Black Talk Media Project because we are going to broadcast our podcast live in Chicago, August 9th. We will start taping at 12:30 p.m. inside of the Black Fire Brigade, 8404 South Kedzie, Chicago, Illinois. And before we do the taping, I've asked people who are suffering with the loss of a gunshot wound victim who has succumbed to his or her injuries to bring a teddy bear with his or her name on it. Last week I mentioned Janari Ricks, and in the less than 7 days that it's taken us to broadcast today, 15 more children and young adults' pictures were placed on the Forget Me Not site. I'm sorry, it's not Forget Me Not, it's Never Forget. And each little button is the name, on each little button is the name of the decedent, and the picture is formulated inside of a teddy bear that's slumped over. So that is Never Forget Chicago. The site is run by journalists who write about the gun violence in Chicago. So the title of the forum in Chicago is going to be The Societal Pathogen, Gun Violence, the Culture and the Cures. So one of the things that people often talk about is whether or not gun violence, and I am looking down at my phone, we're allowed to do that nowadays, whether or not gun violence has any kind of impetus or rooting in a violent culture. So many people say that violent lyrics in songs fuel violent behavior. So is that true? Is it really linked to gun violence? So the data is mixed on it. For instance, if you look at the data on video game violence, and my son has been an avid video game player for a long time, and I remember when I had to go to the store with him and approve of a video that he wanted, and I got it for him, and I watched it, and I asked him about all the killing in the video game, and he explained that those were enemy combatants, and I didn't think for any moment that he would take that into reality. That's where I'm going with that. But the data is mixed on that. So I want to start by talking about violent lyrics and violence. The article that I'm reading from today is from from the APA.org. Violent song lyrics may lead to violent behavior. And I always give Scotty the links. Scotty Reed is the founder of the Black Talk Media Project, and he is my executive producer here on Victims to Victorious. So the article is from the American Psychological Association. It's called Violent Song Lyrics May Lead to Violent Behavior. Violent song lyrics increase negative emotions and thoughts that can lead to aggression. According to a study published in the May issue of the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, the study challenges the ancient Greeks' catharsis hypothesis. So that is one of the things that people, that's why the data is mixed, and that's why they're saying they are challenging the ancient Greek catharsis hypothesis. I said it right the first time. So in other words, there has been a lot of evidence that has been presented previously that says when people are playing the video games, it's a release for them. They won't be violent in real life because their violence tendencies have now become virtual and honed to a game, for instance. So that's the catharsis idea. The Greek catharsis hypothesis that claims that expressing aggressive emotion will later decrease aggressive behavior. Instead, researchers from Iowa State University and the Texas Department of Human Services found that aggressive music lyrics increase aggressive thoughts and feelings, which might perpetuate aggressive behavior and have long-term effects such as influencing listeners' perceptions of society and contributing to the development of aggressive personalities. This study provides the first clean demonstration of violent lyric effects, said lead author Craig Anderson of Iowa State University. In 5 experiments, Anderson and his colleagues asked more than 500 college students to listen to such violent songs as Shoot 'Em Up by Cypress Hill and Hit 'Em Hard by Run DMC, and such nonviolent songs as Finger Licking Good by the Beastie Boys and Love versus Loneliness by the Suicidal Tendencies. Researchers also included the lyrics of humorous, violent, and nonviolent songs like A Boy Named Sue by Johnny Cash and Hello Mutta, Hello Fada by Alan Sherman. After listening to the songs, the students performed various word-associated tasks to test whether they linked more non-aggressive words with aggressive words or filled incomplete words with vowels to make aggressive words. They also reported their feelings of hostility as measured by the state hostility scale, ranking sentences based on their emotions after hearing the songs. The results indicate a relationship between violent song lyrics and increased aggressive thoughts and feelings of hostility. Humorous violent songs also increased aggression levels relative to humorous non-violent songs, according to Anderson. The findings held after the researchers controlled for the listeners' gender and personality differences, as well as the reactions to the different performing artists and musical styles. While more research on effects of violent lyrics must be done, says Anderson, yet another type of entertainment media, when referring to violence, now has been demonstrated to have some negative effects. So there is a group in Chicago called Clear the Airwaves, I believe. I'm going to get them up on my phone in a minute. So the article we just read, and I will put it up, or Scotty will put it up for you on the APA, from the APA.org, I believe that was American Psychological Association. One of the things about that is they're disproving the Carthusis hypothesis. I think I mispronounced it that time. So they're disproving the fact that the aggression is just a release. Instead, they're saying what happens, what is the vestigial effect? So in other words, by giving college students words, in that time frame right after they play the video game, all the words continue to be aggressive. So the group that I was looking for, hopefully we will have someone from the group join us. If not, we will continue talking about violence and lyrics for a little bit. If you just tuned in, we're about 10 minutes into Victims to Victorious. And my name is Angel Fall, and we're very, very excited about coming to Chicago. We are going to broadcast live August 9th. The podcast will begin at 12:30. But before that, if you have a loved one who has succumbed to his or her injuries, meaning they have died from a direct result of gunshot wounds, I'm asking you to bring a teddy bear with their name on it. And we are going to stand in silence and just remember them. And what I'm hoping is that people will put a name to the statistics. Some of my critics say I talk about the statistics as if African American people are to blame. Some of my critics say I talk about the statistics as if there are not human beings involved. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that I'm not really doing that. I want you to understand what the cold hard facts are, because the policy and the public health research dollars, they are going to follow the numbers. So if you feel someone has been excluded from the numbers, because of a certain identity or location, then what I really would ask you to do is to reframe this, okay? Reframe this in a disease model. So for instance, men get prostate cancer, okay? Women don't get prostate cancer. So if you are a researcher and you're getting money to solve prostate cancer, all of your informants will be, in terms of all your informants who have the risk, will be men. And they will have to be men who already who have their prostate intact, okay? So another example, now the researcher could interview women as a control, for instance, but in terms of using the target funding to prevent the illness in the target population, that target population has to be codified and identified. So for instance, let's look back on the horrendous work hazards of being a coal miner. For many years, the coal miners would come up with something called black lung. And actually the coal dust would get into their lungs. It cause emphysema, we call COPD now, and many of them also smoked. Now, if you are trying to solve black lung in coal miners, you're not going to look for people who A, don't work in the coal mine, and B, don't smoke, okay? So that would just be an example of the target population. Yes, you're excluding other people at that point, but the public health officials and the epidemiologists are sent to the epicenter. They are sent to where there is an outbreak. And an outbreak means that there are higher numbers than usual for a specific disease. And in the case of the black lung, yes, people got lung cancer who didn't work in the mines, the coal mines. Yes, people got emphysema who didn't work in the coal mines, and asthma. But once you see a larger portion of them getting it and their life expectancy is shorter, then you have to solve the public health issue. That becomes a public health issue. So again, I'm hoping that those of you who have critiqued me understand what we're really doing. In a public health model, you identify the people who are at risk and you pool your resources to those who are at risk. And then once those numbers come down to what's called an endemic disease, or once they're no longer, once the disease has been eradicated, because sometimes there are outbreaks like E. coli, then you move on to the next group of people who are at risk for a different disease. And I'm not saying all epidemiologists do the same thing. They're infectious disease epidemiologists, like Dr. Fauci, for instance. But the model is the same. Where are the people experiencing an outbreak, or you've heard me use this word many times, where is there a burden of the disease? And that's where you go. So Chicago right now has a burden of disease of astronomical proportions in terms of gunshot wound victims. I never imagined that between tapings, there would be 15 more deaths of young adults and children posted on the Never Forget Me site. Now let's return to, does rap music provoke violent behavior? So this article, we're going to take a look at that because we're trying to see what are some of the cultural factors that increase, or if the cultural factors can be proven to increase the risk of people who are shot and killed by guns, if the music that the perpetrator and the listener to have done, then if the perpetrator and the victim, are both listening to the same lyrics at the same party when they get into a fight, is that a predictor of gun violence? So the effects of violent music on children and adolescents. I'm reading from the Semantic Scholar. Again, I will post these article links. The effects of violent music on children and adolescents. Although much of the debate about the effects of media on youth revolves around television, music is very important to children and adolescents. Try to change the radio station in your car after your child has said it, and you will quickly see that they have a clear and they clearly have deeply held opinions. In a survey of junior and senior high school students in Northern California, students were asked what media they would choose to take with them if they were stranded on a desert island. They were allowed to nominate a first, second, and third choice from a list, including a TV, books, video games, computer, and newspapers. So what did the researchers find? One of the things they found was the television. This article, the reason why I picked this article is because this article predates cell phones. A lot of the listeners and viewers and followers do everything on their cell phones. But in trying to determine what is the way the children were getting the violent messages at this time, they're comparing radio broadcasts and TV, okay? And this is to show you how long this research has been going on, yet it's not totally definitive. So the first choice of most of the children and adolescents was television, and the second one was music, and they're looking at 7th graders. So music's important to youth can be measured by the amount of time they spend listening to it. One sample, Southeastern Junior High School students spend an average of 3 hours per day listening to music and over 4 hours watching television. So when this article starts, when they start doing the research, when they publish the research, they published this research, I believe, around 2006. So again, this is before so many people have a cell phone. And what's important about this research is they have identified the same group of people that I'm discussing here who are, for instance, on the Forget-Me-Not site, adolescents. So one of the questions you might have, and this is something we might be able to address for sure on August 9th, starting at 12:30 p.m. Central Time, which is the local time of Chicago, Illinois, we will be able to discuss this. Do you feel that rap music and music with violent lyrics elicits violence? Certainly the station founder of Black Talk Radio Network, Scotty Reed, he believes that. And one of the other discussions around the violent lyrics. Now, I'm just talking about rap right now, but rock music can have violent lyrics. Violent lyrics can appear across genres. But what is so compelling about the rap music lyrics is that they are actually spoken. They are not sung. So it's very clear the person's tone, the person's cadence, the person's pronunciation. And there are lots of metaphors where you'd have to understand certain pieces of the culture to distinguish between what is being said that is actually violent and what is implied violence. So for instance, if a rapper says, "I don't go anywhere without my 9, now some of you who are unfamiliar with African American culture or rap lyric type metaphors, they're not talking about their golfing iron, and they're not talking about their shoe size. They're talking about a 9mm, for instance. And I would also put out there that children who are listening may not understand, like the first group, the first cohort in this study in the Semantic Scholars. It's called The Effects of Violent Music on Children and Adolescents, Donald F. Roberts, Peter G. Christensen, and Douglas A. Gentle. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. So their first group is 7th graders. And those are people who are between 11 and 13 years old, okay? So one of their arguments is that they start listening to these things early. The average amount of media used by 8th and 9th graders. So they go up to 9th graders and they find that watching TV is still high on the list. Again, this is for the time frame. And video games are high on the list. And of course, there are more boys who watch video games than girls. So that's another part of the research that has some suggestive credence. Again, the data is still mixed, and I went back to an older article to see how how this was established. So the data is still mixed. Well, we do know that more boys play video games, and therefore it's a relative assumption because of the number of video games that are so violent that they are exposed to this violence. So the question becomes, when does someone decide that being violent on the screen or in the virtual world has to be acted out in the real world? So the common sense argument here is, if most people play video games and most people don't ever become mass shooters, for instance, then how influential is it? So some research suggests that people who are predisposed to solve conflicts with violence might be a little more receptive once they're involved in the violent lyrics and the violent video games. And therefore, it's easier for them to make that jump. But most people don't ever make that jump. Now, within the city of Chicago, we are seeing lots of adolescents and children who are in fact dying from gunshot wounds. Now, we do know that very often, well, we do know one thing about African American male homicides between age teenagers to 39 or so. Most African American males are shot and killed by a friend, acquaintance, or relative. And these social circles where the shooting is being done, within those social circles, retaliatory sentiments come up. And then this idea of getting revenge on who shot Pookie, for instance, takes off. And then the people who shot Pookie are killed by the people who know Pookie. And most of these conflicts that are solved with a gun have started out as interpersonal conflicts. And that's why I point you to the articles on LinkedIn by Lisa Rose Rodriguez about reducing morbidity and mortality in African American males by using conflict resolution. And I can have Scotty post a link to that. So what if you do listen to 50 Cent and you do listen to the game? Do you have to solve your problems with violence? Certainly 50 Cent and the game, for instance, are enjoying the spoils of their persona. Now, 50 Cent, I mentioned before, got shot 9 times, and in the movie, in his biopic, you hear the doctor say something like, "I've never operated on someone who survived being shot 9 times." Now, is 50 Cent out there now shooting someone else? No. I don't think someone who's invested in a vitamin water wants to solve his conflicts anymore with a 9mm. So maybe those of you who believe the rap lyrics are more impressionable, or should I say African American males are more impressionable because of certain other risk factors, like no male figure in the home. Sometimes I tell a story about no males, and I use an animal model. And before you get offended, remember that human beings are mammals if you believe in Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. So there is a phenomenon on the African savanna, and that is elephants will start killing rhinos, if I'm telling the story correctly, for no reason at all, other than just to be aggressive. Remember from being at the zoo or your elementary school biology class, an elephant is actually a herbivore. He or she are vegetarians. So it's very clear that when they kill the rhino, it's just for aggression. Now, who kills these rhinos and why? Zoologists have discovered that when a group of male elephants have no older elephant around, no father, or they've grown up without the father. Oftentimes in South Africa, the game warden culls the herd, as they call it. They often kill the bull males. Of course, the bull males die because of poaching as well for the ivory. So when these young adolescent elephants grow up without a male figure, they become violent towards the rhinos or hippopotamuses, and they kill them for no reason whatsoever. Again, an elephant is not a carnivore. So some people use this as a parody for what happens when you live in a home where there is no alpha male to check your aggression, to show you when you can be assertive versus deadly. That's something that the nuances are missing. Shooting someone over sneakers, shooting someone over disrespect. You're not defending your family when someone is breaking into your house. You're out on the street discharging a weapon because someone called your baby mama a bitch or a hoe. Now, that leads me to another discussion about the people who don't like the lyrics and say they fuel violence, is that the lyrics in many of the hardcore rap records are demeaning to people as human beings. Everyone is a nigger. Everyone is an MF. I don't know if I can say it out loud. Everyone is a hoe. Everyone is a bitch. And so this has a way of washing away and diminishing the humanity of people when you listen to it. I recently had gone out before the pandemic to a club on a date, and I asked my date if we could leave because the lyrics to the music over and over again. Somebody was a bitch, somebody was a hoe, somebody was performing sexual acts, someone was constantly being demeaned by gender or race. So these are things that people are studying. If you believe in the value of your fellow man, do you decide to end his or her life so quickly and without remorse? Last week I mentioned the way that some countries don't allow you to own a gun have a gun in your home. I believe Canada has a lot of that. Your gun is a weapon that is locked up, and you have to go and get it for specific reasons. Now, most of these shootings in the African American of the African American male are done with handguns. Handguns are easily sequestered in sagging jeans, sagging underwear, for instance, large coats. These weapons are used in most of the murders. 90% of white men who die from gunshot wounds, over 90% of them, the wounds are self-inflicted. So this is a very, very different set of facts. So we are coming to Chicago on August 9th to discuss how gun violence has its roots in violent lyrics, violent cultures, and gun violence is totally preventable when public health measures are in place. I see that Kwabena has joined us, and we have been discussing violent lyrics in music and violent video games, and hopefully you'll be able to join us. Am I pronouncing your name right?
Say it again.
I said Kwabena.
That's fine. Yes,
Yeah.
fine. Thank you.
How do you pronounce it?
People say Kwabena, Kwabena. When I got the name in Ghana, it was Kwabena, but a lot of people over there say Kwabena too. So either or, just don't. What's that word they always say? Just don't call me late for dinner or something. Other than that, I'm good.
And is it a Twi or Fanti or Ashanti name?
Oh, it's Tree, I think.
Okay.
Tree. It's a kind of language. So Tree, I think, is the one.
So please tell our viewers here on Victims to Victorious about your quest to eliminate the airplay of this music that has these violent lyrics and these denigrating lyrics.
Wow, it's been quite a struggle, but clearly the Airwaves project, the Black Talk Media Network has been with us for quite a while. You know, talking with Scotty on a lot of the news programs for quite a while, dealing with this issue, because it's been an issue for quite a while. It's just that the music that's mashed down the minds of the masses of our people is just embarrassing. It's just dangerous. It's pornographic. It's materialistic. It's disrespectful. It's misogynistic. It promotes self-hate. It promotes shooting and killing people. It promotes being a drug addict, a drug slinger, and it don't stop. It's like it really amazes me that we've gotten to this point with the music. and we see what's being played out with the fratricide or the intercommunal violence that's taking place in urban areas all around the country. I just saw Chattanooga, a video of Chattanooga, Tennessee, with violence happening and where children or people are walking down the street. You know, same thing in Como, Mississippi. You know, we talked about Charlotte the other day. We were on with our sister Leela talking about Charlotte, North Carolina on Juneteenth. The violence that's at a Juneteenth fest, the violence that took place there. And here in Chicago recently, I know I'm sure you talked about this, the funeral where 15 people were shot, including 10 women. 10 women. And there's a song on the radio that says, I'm gonna put you in the news, I'm gonna put you on a t-shirt. I'm gonna have your name put on a t-shirt because I'm gonna murk you. And a murk, of course, means to murder you. Then I'm gonna take $20,000 in drug money and have your hearse shot up. So I'm gonna shoot up your funeral. And this is in hot rotation on the radio stations. We haven't heard it in a little while now because we brought that issue up. So they're hearing us, but they got to come further than just hearing us about individual songs, because this is a practice that is so pervasive, that is so inundated into the minds of the masses of our people, that even when you go underground or talk to any young rapper around the country, it's the same old thing. It's violence, it's blatant disrespect of women, which leads to violence. And this is a crazy situation we're in, but now is the time. Now is the time to make that change.
I totally agree. And that's why Scotty and I decided to do the live podcast August 9th at 8404 South Kedzie, which is the Black Fire Brigade in Chicago, Illinois. We're going to start at 12:30 local time. And at 11 a.m., I've been asking people to bring a teddy bear with the name of the decedent that they are missing, that they are grieving, that they are outraged and angered about, so that people can have a face to the name. Much of what I do is talk about the statistics, and people who critique me online don't believe that I believe in the humanity behind it, but I certainly do. It's just that I'm advocating a public health model. Gun violence is a disease, and this is a multi-pronged approach with a multi-causal foundation. And as you were trying to join us, I told a story about the way elephants on the savannah who grow up in a group of if there's just adolescent male elephants and no female or male in the herd, those elephants randomly start killing rhinos and hippopotami, I don't know, a hippopotamus. And the reason is they're not in a family group anymore, and they don't have an alpha male to show them that they're not supposed to be violent in that way, because elephants are herbivores. So they don't even eat the rhino and the hippopotamus after they stomp it to death. So that is a phenomenon that is seen because of poaching, because of course the male elephants are going to have the bigger tusks, for instance. And so it's a theory that can be applied to humans if it's okay with people to understand we are mammals, and elephants live in a social group and they live for a very long time. So the people, very often one of the risk factors for violence is not having a father in the home. Another risk factor for violence is being a victim of felony assault yourself. Violent acts predict other violent acts. And in preparing for our live broadcast, I spoke with people at Cure Violence, Dr. Slutskin's group, and I've done a show on that. They have violence interrupters who are able to predict within the social circle. So one of the things that I want the viewers to engage us in, Kwabena, is understanding that a very simple way to resolve this. Yes, there's rap music. Yes, people play video games, but everyone who hears the violent messages, all those people do not act out violence in real life. But one of the things that I am advocating is the teaching of interpersonal conflict resolution to these young men who actually believe this is the only way to solve a conflict. One example I have is I know of someone who witnessed their father being murdered when they were 12. They actually assisted the murderer, who was their uncle, dragging the body out in the projects hallway in Brooklyn, New York. He said the case was never papered. 6 years later, when he was a drug dealer and he had a conflict, he shot and killed that drug dealer. And because he took the drug dealer's guns and cars from New York to New Jersey, he caught a federal case. And that's right, when I met him, he was 44 years old. He'd been locked up for 26 years. And one of the things he said to me is, what I didn't know got me in prison. I didn't know as a 12-year-old it wasn't okay for my uncle to kill my father. And I didn't know as an 18-year-old that it wasn't okay to kill the other drug dealers because I got into an argument.
Wow. You gonna hopefully you'll talk about the elephant story on this coming Sunday. Because when I think about that, I take it back to, and I use this example a lot, Boys in the Hood. How Trey's father, he was there. He was there. No, you're not going with them on that mission or whatever. So I think about that. Also, there is a preacher, and I can't recall his name right now, but hopefully when you're here on Sunday, you can meet him, because he's camped out on the corner, which is not too far from where we're going to be meeting at, but on the corner where the 15 people were shot after that funeral. And he's on a hunger strike. And what he's attempting to do is to get them to make this violence a health issue like you're talking about. So it'll be great for you all to meet sometime on this Sunday too. Hope we can go over and see him.
Well, maybe he can actually, maybe he can actually come or interact with us. That would be fantastic. I would also like to know, and
maybe we can sneak in some food.
Say that again.
Maybe we can sneak in some food. I was playing. Yeah.
Well, we're not going to have any food. I've been asking people to donate water. We have a GoFundMe page. I'm asking people to follow me on Twitter, On Air Angel, and on Facebook, Angel Fall Host, because it does cost money to bring this to Chicago. We have an RV. The RV gas and tolls and costs $333. And so far, I am self-funded. But one of the things that I would like is, if you can afford to buy a teddy bear, we will write the name of the victim on the teddy bear. If you are not in Chicago, you just have to go to the producer's webpage, L Rodriguez, ELLERODRIGUES. Go to her page, and you can also see the GoFundMe buttons, and she will write the name. If you donate teddy bears, I looked them up, they cost between $20 and even $100. But if you donate money and you specify in the GoFundMe page that it's for a certain person, certain victim, we will write the name on it. And the Forget Me Not website shows the names, they post the names of each person. They seem to have a preference for young adults and children that are dying through gunshot wounds. And before you joined us, Kwabena, between the time I taped the show last week and this week, which is actually only 5 days, 15 new names were on that site of gunshot wound victims. So follow me on Twitter, On Air Angel. You can also see my GoFundMe page on Air Angel on Twitter. So I know Scotty is giving us signals. We have about 5 minutes left, Kwabena, and I want you to talk.
Well, when you talked about the conflict resolution, that's beautiful that you're teaching that, because one of the things we always talk about is that once we get this off the air, that's when the psychologists, the counselors, the teachers have to come in and deprogram the people, because we've been programmed so long to handle our conflicts violently via this music. And sometimes even this music is not even a conflict. I'm doing something pornographic and sexual, and now I'm gonna run up in your house with the shotty, and by the way, your mama might be at home. And it's not even a conflict. They're not even a conflict. you know, just rapping, and all of a sudden, I'm gonna burn me an end at the store where your mammy and grandmama shop at. It's just amazing how pervasive, again, this stuff is. The number one song in the country, right? Well, the number one song in the U.S. No, let me start here. In the world, around the time when George Floyd was brutally terrorized and murdered, this was a song that was number one in England, in New Zealand, in Ireland, in Switzerland, and maybe Switzerland and Australia. It was a song that now the number one song in the U.S. is called "Rockstar" by the Baby, and his instrument is not a guitar. His instrument is a gun. And the number one song in all those countries in the world, and the song is about shooting ends. My daughter is a G. She saw me shoot an end before the age of 2. This is the number one song in those countries all around about shooting. They had a bunch of other lyrics about shooting Black people. And the Baby, he has a baby with him. His daughter, she's not even 2 years old. So evidently she might get caught in the crossfire. So we just had a 2-year-old baby out here in Hammond, Indiana, just got shot and killed. You know, we just had a 9-year-old child the other day shot and killed. And this is the type of music you're playing. And so now this song has been number one in the US since like the last 6 or 7 weeks. The number one song about shooting Black people in a time when people are moving towards righteousness. They're taking down Confederate monuments, you know, per the work we're doing in North Carolina. They're on a bunch of other places. They're taking the Confederate emblem off the flag in Mississippi. You know, the Redskins have gotten rid of that racist emblem off their football team, but yet you still have on the radio not just calling us ends and disrespecting Black women, but talking about shooting us. And then right before that song was number one in the US, it was a song called Savages with Beyonce, who now has an album, I guess a visual album now about Africa. But before that, she was on this song about calling herself a savage, calling herself a B and an N. And the sister who made the song initially, Megan Pete, and we refused to call her the name of a male horse, but Megan Pete is on that song with her, and she gets shot. You know what happened to her, right? She got shot in both her feet allegedly by another rapper, both in her feet. They said glass had struck her feet, her foot. That's why she was limping on the video. But no, she got shot. And now the issue is that Black women are not treated, you're not protected, which is true. We don't protect our sisters like we should. But you're making songs about savages and pornographic music that's not calling for protection of Black women, not even calling for Black women to be respected at all. So this issue is very important. We really look forward to seeing you and being with you on Sunday, and give us as much information as you can about it so we can share on this issue. Right now, a hot time in Chicago. I don't know if you know what happened last night. One of the biggest rappers underground, and so he was shot and killed. And you know, it's big time gangbanger, well, low level gangbangers, but big time on the low level gangbanging that's going on in Chicago. And up on the Gold Coast in the Rixie area of Chicago, and was shot and killed. I guess he was posting where he was at, and so some of his ops came and shot another brother and shot a sister in the hand. Gold Coast. So the mayor's up in arms about that. The night before in Los Angeles, this is Monday night or early wee hours of the morning on Tuesday morning, a football player was celebrating he got drafted at a party. You got to see the video for that. Pow, pow, pow. Just shots being fired like crazy. Somebody died out there. Also on Monday, 15 people were shot in Chicago, 14 shot in New York City. So this is so important, the work that we're doing. And so we really look forward, again, to being with you on Saturday.
Well, it's actually Sunday, Kwabena, and Scotty's giving us like the 2-minute warning. I really am looking forward to discussing this more with you. We're going to have Dr. Michael McGee, who is starting a gun violence program for 100 Black men in Chicago. He's been successful with the Foundation of POP violence in Indiana. The taping will begin at 12:30 p.m. local time at the Black Fire Brigade, which is 8404 South Kedzie. If you wish to donate, type in Victims to Victorious, GoFundMe in Google, or follow me on Twitter on Air Angel. You can also go to the Black Talk Radio Network and donate directly to the Black Talk Media Project. So Kwabena, we've got about a minute. I want you to say something before we meet in Chicago.
Check out our movement at Clear the Airways Project. It's on Facebook. We have plenty of interviews that Scotty has done with us. Also on the Black Talk Media Project, Black Talk Media Network. He did a recent one with Bob Law, and they were talking about this code of behavior, which kind of goes in line with what you're talking about with dealing with the conflict resolution. And it's really beautiful new code of behavior that we came out with the National Black Leadership Alliance. I would ask people to probably check that video out and definitely check it out. It's really good because this is what we need coming out of this. Whenever we come out of this virus to this new normal, we have to start behaving and treating each other better with more love. And this music that they play, it's all about hate, not love. And we have to change that.
Thank you. Thank you for closing the show. I want to thank the podcast listeners for supporting the Black Talk Media Project. I'm Angel Fall for Victims to Victorious. And thank you so much, Kwabena, for joining us this evening.
You're welcome. See you Sunday.